Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Roger Gagnon. Roger is a former U.S. Navy surface warfare officer who currently serves as the nuclear safety engineer for the U.S. Navy's Strategic System Program. More importantly, he is my longtime friend. Roger was my roommate in college, my shipmate in the Navy, and the best man at my wedding. Roger has served in dozens of leadership roles throughout his military and business career. I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of leadership. So, Roger, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Thank you for having me. This is my very first podcast, by the way, so go easy on me.
Well, we'll go easy. You're a rookie in the podcast game, but you're not a rookie in leadership. But that's why I wanted to get you on and talk about it. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, you were an officer in the Navy like myself. But you were a surface warfare officer. Tell us a little bit about what you did and kind of what are the roles you served in when you were in the Navy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I started out as the communications officer, so that was a lot of fun, learning all about that program. And my favorite experience was we had they call a beard iron message, so you have to get it answered within 5 minutes, and I had to scramble and wake up the captain. He wasn't happy at all, but we got it done in like with 2 seconds to spare. So that was an exciting example. Also did anti-submarine warfare. That was fun, firing torpedoes. We got to do some experimental ones, which was exceptionally cool. To know that you're one of the first ones trying out something the R&D guys have been working on for years. Probably the biggest impact one I had was the navigator. That was a high stress job because back when I did it in the early 90s, we were just shooting lines off of our compasses on a paper chart that had lots of erase marks on it. And sometimes the scale of we couldn't zoom in and out. They were paper charts. So sometimes the scale was a little sketchy, and there were some pretty scary times, but I'm happy to say, including doing a helicopter control side job, carting special forces and Coast Guard and whatnot. I never had any accidents and nobody was killed. And I don't think that was luck. I think it's because there was a lot of training on the 3 years I was on that ship. It was a Perry class guided missile frigate stationed out of Long Beach, California, which is now no longer there, but a massive marina and entertainment complex has taken its place.
So rest in peace, Long Beach, and rest in peace, frigates. Frigates don't even exist anymore. So rest in peace. So yeah, so it was interesting. You serve a communications officer. You served as a navigator. That's a big job on a ship. You're responsible for making sure that the ship stays in liquid and not in interacting with any solids, which is very important. What would you say some leadership lessons you took away from your time in the Navy?
Well, I happened to be on a ship that wasn't fully staffed because it was a Naval Reserve Force ship. So we did a lot of like reservist training on the weekends. But when we went out and deployed, they didn't staff us up to a full size either. So my challenge was, like you just said, not running us aground. So how would I get extra navigation people on when I was already on such a lean crew? I would take signalmen and other guys that never were even trained on being navigator, and I would bring them in, and I would have the best guys in the division train them. And usually those other guys, and even yeomen sometimes, so I got them all away from the typewriters, and they got to do some much more fun things for them than they normally would have done. So they didn't complain that they had extra duty. They actually liked getting out of their normal daytime jobs on the ship. So I liked working the most with being, that cross training thing I'll never forget. That was a good experience from the Navy. And I did take it with me after I became a civilian.
Yeah, one of the things that people don't realize, and I know when I'm on podcasts and I talk to people about leadership in the Navy, was you just dealt with situations with the people that you deployed with. Like you like on a submarine, we locked the hatch for 100 days, and you weren't going to fire somebody, you weren't going to hire somebody, you had to deal, you had to make do with what you had for a crew. And it sounds like you were understaffed for the roles that you had, but you made do by giving other people in other divisions some collateral duties and to support the navigation process of the ship. And I think business leaders, we can all learn from that, right? So we think that we need more people, but or could we cross train some of the existing resources and put them in place to be able to to be able to help when needed. I know, my business, I run a small manufacturing business. A lot of times we get really busy. Everyone in the office puts on their boots and we go out on the shop floor and we make stuff because it needs to happen. So we make do with what we have. And I think that's a great lesson.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously you've done it a lot yourself in your career, and that's probably the biggest takeaway as far as what I took with me. And the other part would be um, the good examples of leadership I saw on the ship. I had some bad ones too, which we don't need to talk about today, but the good ones, I did remember some of the things they did, and I tried to absorb those into my own style once I got out.
Yeah. I remember, I don't know if we were in ROTC together back at Worcester Polytech, and we took our ROTC at the Holy Cross. And I remember, and I don't know if you remember, but we went through some leadership training. I remember them talking about that idea of learn from every leader you serve with, whether good or bad. And the good ideas you want to keep and you want to use in the future. And the bad ideas you want to make sure you never repeat. And I remember that somewhere in our training, and I don't know if that's something that stuck with you as well.
Oh, definitely. And the bad one, for example, when I transitioned into the civilian world and I started seeing some of these business leaders repeat those absolutely do not ever do in your life kind of mistakes, and I saw them do that, it really got to me because, and then I would always find out were they former military, into a person, not any of those bad business leaders I've dealt with in my career that were making those mistakes. None of them were veterans. That tells you a lot about the training of civilian business leaders that are not veterans.
Yeah, yeah. Well, or the lack of training. I think that there's a big gap missing between. We teach. One of the things I've noticed, just in terms of being in the leadership space for a little while, is that we do teach business leaders the technical skills of business leadership, like accounting and legal and sales and operations and engineering. But we miss out, I think, on the people side of it, which is how to deal with people, how to motivate people, how to get them excited to come to work every day and accomplish the goals. We seem to miss out on those soft skills, I would say, and we focus on the hard skills. And that, I think, is the reason why so many civilian or business leaders have challenges leading people, because they haven't been trained in the basics of leadership.
Yeah, that's a good example. And the one I mentioned that was making all those mistakes all the time, he was an exceptionally smart. He wasn't an engineer. I don't want to give too much information about him, but he was exceptionally smart in what he went to college for sure.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just dropped. And he had rose to we were calling the highest level of incompetence kind of a thing. And once he got to that VP level, it was rough working, reporting to him.
Yeah, the highest level of incompetence, right? I love that. Now you've had a long career. You've been leading people in business. Most of your career has been new product development, continuous improvements, technology transfers. You've worked for a variety of companies, everything from medical devices to consumer products. We mentioned a little bit about some of the leadership differences, but what are some of the big leadership differences you saw between the military leaders and business leaders?
Right. So the main one is, even for the good civilian business leaders I've had the pleasure of reporting to, they didn't always grasp the true reason for their existence, which is basically to be providing the tools for your people under you to succeed. Coleman was still exceptionally, bright, and they didn't piss off any of their employees, but they also didn't always think hey, this person wants training next year, but our budget's tight. Well, he'll just have to wait for a few more years. Or she could, or he could change the budget and get that person the training. That I consider that training is a big carrot you can give an employee. And a lot of employees, I remember some survey I read, a lot of them are not leaving because of the money. They're leaving because they're not happy by how they're being managed. So not providing your employees the tools they need to succeed, you might as well just cut their paycheck in half because they are going to leave at some point. So I always tried to keep the most opportunities I could besides the obvious salary as incentives to keep these employees motivated. And that was what I focused on because I didn't want to deal with turnover. And I
Yeah.
had pretty low turnover for the ones that I was actually in management for. So I think that wasn't luck either. That was because I was thinking about them and what I can do to keep them working in our company.
I think that's powerful because I think we sort of forget about that. I always say that leadership is about motivating your group of people to get something done. So that means you have to have a goal, you have to have, you have to have people, and you have to be more focused on motivating them. And a lot of cases, one way to motivate them is to remove the obstacles in their path and give them the tools they need to succeed, right? So giving instead of so a lot of times I see business leaders make the mistake that they think they're the most important person, so everyone needs to give them information, give them support. But the truth of the matter is that the leader's not making product, they're not designing product, they're not talking to customers, right? They're actually the one that our role should be to take care of the people who are taking care of the business. And I think you just nailed it, which is give them the tools they need to succeed, give them the training they need, and make sure that they have everything they need so that they're not slowing down, so they can run at a full pace towards the objectives of the company. And I think we miss out on that sometimes. We think that, well, I'm the boss, everyone's here to serve me, and that when you do that, you're destined for failure.
Yeah, in my current I'm not going to say my current boss, my current leader that's above me, she uh, is so that's so important to her that even interns that go into our group, she doesn't have them making coffee and going for donuts. She's having them trained on the most advanced nuclear safety software there is in the whole country. And they come out of the program already having that on the resume. This is software that you can't even get off the streets. It's special access software, obviously, and they have to have a clearance to even use it. So they that's what's remarkable about my current company, that why I hope to at least finish out my corporate career there, because I like the management there, and they got it, and not shocking to you if I tell you she's a former torpedoman's mate, then that's not shocking that she already had that. She got it. She came into the company already knowing how to properly manage her employees. So that's an example of a good, leader.
Was she a submariner?
No, she was more involved in weapons facilities.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, women are on submarines now, and they could be torpedo men too. So we're torpedo mates. I guess they don't call them torpedo men anymore.
He told me they no longer use that. They call everything is now gunner's mates, even if it's
Gunners mates. Yeah, yeah,
I, I'm like, well, why would they get rid of that? But she said they consolidated it.
yeah.
So now it's all GM.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's I'm from the old Navy. You and I are from the old Navy, not the new Navy. It's funny, like what is the t-shirt company, whatever, Old Navy. I'm like, yeah, I was part of the old Navy. I wasn't part of the new Navy. So I love that.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit. I've been friends a long time. You lost your wife tragically in January of 2020. And for those who don't know you've you've been raising two special needs teenagers on your own for the past 3 years. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome. You lose your wife. You have these two children who need a lot of care, and you've had to provide that by yourself over these years. What's it been like, and how have you overcome those challenges?
Right. Yeah. So um, the military training, I think if I never had that, I would have been in a real, uh, I don't think I would have been able to pull it off, to be honest with you. I think because, the training I got, like when you're in an emergency, uh, stay calm, prioritize things, manage your time. The first thing I did was, and I'm not going to go into where I used to live and all that, but I was in another state, and I said, well, this state I cannot afford to, live, even afford our place anymore because I lost my wife. So the first goal I set, and that was a few days after it happened in January 2020, was to find a way to get out of here by the fall, move to another state that's more affordable, and more importantly, has a great job market for engineering, and then just rent there. And so I set a goal of the fall of 2020, and I sold the house in 2 days because I happened to hit a a great real estate timing opportunity. I sold it in 2 days, and I've been renting here ever since, where I live now. And then realizing, so I spoke to somebody, I have some great friends like you. I forget who gave me the advice, but they're like, Roger, you're not Superman, so you better get help
Mm.
for your kids because you still have to have a day job. So I focused on that, and once I moved here, I had to learn the new system, because every state handles special needs children differently. Half the reason why I moved where I am now is that it has a fantastic school system, so that absolutely checked that box off. The other one had a great government, and I'm working for a defense contractor now, like you mentioned, and it's exceptionally high in that area. Um, it also has great biotech, which I did a lot of, so I always have that as a fallback. But the job and the kids' schools, and so it was the right environment to move to, and also to have uh, the operational discipline just to manage my time. So I also realized, okay, once I get help, caregivers, once I get that system going, then I got to help channel out some of this anger I have against the hospital, which is not trivial, because, and can't get into what happened, but it's a lot of anger still, against that hospital. And because it's taking so long to resolve the lawsuit, so what do I do with that anger? Well, it's not good to keep it internal. So I started playing tennis again, to the point where some woman invited me to start a USTA adult league on Sundays, and I'm like, well, I already play a lot of tennis. She's like, no, you can actually, you know, get ranked and all that. She's like, play more tennis. So I'm like, I started doing that, and
Oh, that's great.
that's a good example of how I, got rid of a lot of that aggression by just beating the hell out of that tennis ball and keeping it in the court. So that's what I do on the side. But I had to do so, taking care of me and also the kids, and having structure, keeping the structure that they had with their mom, because she had a part-time job, at her 90% or 90% of her time was focused on them.
Mm.
She dropped her career essentially to, once we knew both of our children had autism, she just tossed her career. She had a big career too. She just tossed it. One of us had to, and she decided to do that. But I learned a lot from what she did. All right, so I also learned her things that she did, and they're not thrown away. I've absorbed them, and I use them today with the kids.
Mm. Tell us about your son and daughter. I love them. I love hearing stories about them. Tell us a little bit about them and their personalities.
Yeah, so there's Jack. Jack just turned 19 and Chloe's 16. And they're both nonverbal, so people think, oh, it must be boring to go, over there because nothing's being said except for everybody else. But they have communication devices, they use since they've been 5, they don't none of us have learned sign language yet, which I might still do, but they have great uh, iPads that are kind of like hieroglyphics. It's got symbols and words, and once they learn the words, they can stitch together sentences very quickly just by touching a few buttons. So that's how they express at least the very basics of what they need. They're not at the point where they're having conversations like we are, but the goal is that when they get to that point where they want to communicate that much, we can always still all get instructed in sign language, because these devices aren't going to be fast enough because they're in multiple pages. It just will be too clumsy.
Yeah.
The sign language is something somebody brought up to me. It's like, you should start looking into that. So um, I'm at to the point now where I have a good communication with them, but it can get better. So, but they're a lot of fun. They they love to do outdoor stuff. So we recently went to Pennsylvania on vacation, and they went and swam in the lake. Uh, the guy that was our host took Jack on his 4x4 on his bass fishing boat. We all went for a big, it was a huge lake, so we went on a lake cruise and hiking. It was, a big getaway outdoors trip, and they both had a great time. So they're just a
That's,
lot of fun. Just because they don't speak doesn't mean that they're not fun. They all of my caregivers really enjoy them. So that's also keep allowing me to retain good caregivers, because they actually like working with my kids. So
and your daughter loves swimming. She
oh
you
yeah,
can't get her out of the hot tub, huh?
yeah. So people are saying, well, how does he can afford a hot tub? I'll tell you how I did it. My daughter, it this wasn't originally a $15,000 hot tub. I used to work in that industry, filtration of hot tubs, and I knew the model, and the lady was selling it for like 5,000. So I went to her, and I'm like, I could only afford a few hundred. So I told her about my daughter. I showed her a picture of it. She was divorcing her husband. Apparently, he was a rich jerk, and she didn't care other than getting it out of her place that she got. And I offered a few hundred, and my daughter's picture won her over. She just was an empathetic woman, and she said, "Okay, I'll give it to you for 300."
I
So
love
he's been in it like almost every day. So that's their water therapy. But you know, there are some people out there with empathy. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
found that out during the last few years. It's not,
Now I understand you have to move. You're currently renting, and that lease will be up next summer, and you're looking to buy a house. So part of the financial challenges is keeping up with the care of your children, and then also making this transition to something finally permanent. Is that right?
yeah, that's right. The landlord's terrific, but to be fair to her, we have a fixed 3-year lease. The real estate market here has gone sky high. She could probably make close to double what I'm paying now. I don't want to pinch her, she's been so good. So I'm just gonna go somewhere else at the end of the lease, and I'm either trying to find owner financed houses, which are really hard to get, or I can at least use my VA loan. So that's the plan. Mhm.
Oh, that's great. So we're one of the things, as we're talking through this, I've been working to help Roger. We started a GoFundMe account for Roger. We've got that up and running. We're going to link in the show notes here to help him in that transition. So he's had to do it all on his own for the past 3 years. It's been a struggle, but he's made a lot of progress. He's got himself moved into a state that's much more affordable and also supportive of his children. And now the next step is to get him permanently into a house. So we're going to have a link in the show notes for this GoFundMe account. But we would highly encourage you to click on it. I highly encourage you to click on it and to see if you can donate and help Roger get to his permanent home with the children, because that's the last step in this long journey he's been on for the past 3 years. So we're going to have that link in the show notes. So I want to switch gears again. So you have a side business. You have a business called RHG Design. So what do you do in that business, Roger?
Yeah, so I've been doing that for since 2005, I think. And so when I was married, you know, to make extra money where we lived, uh, my wife would like sometimes I didn't do it every weekend, but she would watch the kids when I was doing this consulting on the weekends. And what it is, it's anybody that's ever had an invention idea in America knows that if you don't know how to do it yourself and you hire an attorney, if you get away with paying less than 15,000 for that one invention, you're lucky. I I saw this first myself when I helped do some drawings for an inventor that had already hired an attorney, but he didn't want to pay their full price. So I did the drawings for that patent, and he accidentally left a copy of the bill that they still charged him not doing the drawings, which are the most difficult part of a patent, are the figure drawings. They didn't even do that for him, and I saw the bill was $15,000 for writing around the drawings that I
Mhm.
supplied. So I'm like, I got to be able to get people a better price and still make a good profit myself. I don't have a administrative assistant or paralegals. I can just learn how to write the patent too. And then the patent office has, similar to the IRS, there are all the forms you just download yourself and fill out. So that's what I was doing. I was writing everything for the inventor. Then I would direct them to the website. They would file. I basically ghost wrote their specifications, but it was still their property, their idea. They would meet with me until I captured everything. And I've lost track of how many clients I've had over those years, but they're all over their place. They vary from police officers to luthiers, which are guitar makers. There was an autistic one for color coded shoelaces for helping. I remember some of them. Some of them didn't have any money at all, so I would write it as long as I was a co-owner of the patent. So I did some of that. Um, you know, I have so many examples, but it's always been a nice for me because it's creative and it's fun, and I can do it on the side. And when I joined my current company, I wasn't going to hide it from them. I'm like, I'm going to do this stuff on the weekends. I'm not bringing work home. And I said, I'm going to still do this. And they said, do you do any military patents? I'm like, no, these are just American civilians. They're like, no problem. I
Mm-hmm.
still do it now.
So if you have, so the people that would seek you out are people that have an idea for an invention, they want to patent it, they don't even know where to start, and you're gonna say, look, I've been doing this for years. I'll guide you through the process. I'll make sure that we get the drawings done correctly. We'll get the description of the invention correctly. So we'll write it in a way that can be submitted to the patent office, right? Is that pretty much what you do?
Yeah, I get them all the way to the point where they file it, and they pay the filing fee. They fill out the forms. They have the specifications. I give them a complete specification package, so they just have to do all the forms, file it, and then I think I have about 95% success rate. So there's been a
Oh,
few that I
wow.
didn't get, but the reason I got the patents for them is usually the patent office will try to tie in an argument, and they'll do a ridiculous argument. Like, for example, say you're doing a patent for a new type of power tool. The patent office will reject um, your claims, saying that there's a cat toy that uses the same exact technology as your new power
Wow.
tool. So they're saying, so it's no good. So a lot of people give up when they see that, but actually they're just trying to step on you and see if you go away. All you have to do is counter argue though that actually you just have to provide correct arguments against them, and that's why I have such a good success rate, because I I'm not an attorney, so all I do is call them up. I have a book written by an attorney. I said, well, I would thumb through the book and say, I would use this argument on this page. This one looks good. I said, you're gonna have to write the letter yourself, but use this argument. I think is good. Some of them just say, no, I'll just go to an attorney. But some of them just do that. And whatever they did, they always ended up getting it. So either path. I am going to get, once, I get the settlement, I am going to do it full time. I'm going to transition into it full time. And I'm going to get my patent agent license. At that point, I can do everything an attorney can do.
That's fantastic.
I can
So
represent them. I can write letters. That's the plan when this eventually gets settled. Yeah.
that's fantastic. So listen up, leaders. There's a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this podcast, and you're thinking to yourself, I got this great idea for some technology or a new way of doing things. You better protect yourself with a patent, and you better find someone like Roger, or I would highly recommend go with Roger, and he can help you get that process done for a lot less than what it would cost you to go with a high paid patent attorney. And some of that you're going to have to do yourself. But again, if you're an entrepreneur, you know that you're going to be doing a lot of stuff by yourself in those early days. So it's a great, affordable way for you to take an idea and file it into a patent. So that's one of the reasons I want to get Roger on the show as well, because I know a lot of you who are listening in have got these great ideas, and but it's hard to navigate the whole patent process. So call Roger. Roger's going to help you through that process, and he's going to, as he mentioned, a 95% success rate. That's pretty good. So if you want to know how to get your intellectual property protected, especially in this day and age of AI and everything else, you better go quickly and get your ideas patented so that you are protected from the people out there who are scamming. So yeah, that's great service. So Roger, I'm glad you shared that information. So let's wrap this up. How can listeners find out more about you and these services? And again, I mentioned the GoFundMe. We're going to put that link in the show notes. So we're going to help Roger get to this next stage in life, which is getting out of the rental property, getting into a home, permanent location for him and his family. And so we're going to put that out there. I'll put a link here down below. Please click on that. Please give. I think it's a really important thing to support Roger. He's served his country. He's taken care of these two teenagers. Not easy. He's done a fantastic job with them. And I highly encourage you to click on that link and donate. So how can people find out about your services from a patent perspective?
So if you don't mind, John, I'm just going to give you my business email address.
Okay.
I'd rather do a rapport with somebody first and find out if I can help them. I always do a non-disclosure agreement, so it doesn't matter how big or small the idea is. We get that out of the way, then they know that I will never disclose their idea. We do that first, and then we do a phone call, and then we take it from there. Normally, they will need a patent search done, so I charge a very small fee for that. And then if I unfortunately find their idea on the web, on my patent data search, I'll give them the bad news, but then they're only out, $100, not talking to an attorney and, $2,000 later, he advises them not to file the patent. So anybody can do a patent search on the government database, but it is similar to many government software systems, not easy to use, but I've done it for over 15 years, so I'm comfortable doing it for people. And that's the first step. And then if it's not, even if there's overlap, that doesn't matter. As long as it's not a clone of your idea, then I always advise clients to go for it.
That sounds great.
You'll still get it. Yeah.
That sounds great. So I like that approach where you get a chance to talk to the client first. So we're going to put Roger's work email as a contact for you to reach out to him and have that conversation. Like you said, one of the first things I do is a patent search. And believe me, I've done this before in my business. I have spent a lot of money with lawyers, and only to find out that there was prior art out there. And so don't make that mistake like I did. Spend $100. It's the best money you've ever spent, and do it with Roger, and you're going to find out whether or not you can move forward or not. So don't spend $10,000 and realize you can't go any further, because that's what I did. People, don't do that. I don't know why I didn't call Roger, but I didn't. So don't make that mistake. So this has been a great conversation. A lot of things we talked about. We talked about leadership. We talked about the challenges that you've faced with your family over the past 3 years. And then we've talked about, the work that you do to help people patent their ideas. So really appreciate, Roger, you coming on the show. This has been a great episode. I appreciate all that you've done. And again, I'm going to put the link down for the GoFundMe for Roger. I want to encourage each and every one of you to click on it and donate. And that would really go a long way to helping Roger and his family get finally settled. So Roger, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your unique perspective, and thanks for being a friend all these years.
You're the best. Thank you for being my best buddy.
Thanks again. I appreciate it. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.